Hi, my name is Jiso and I'm reading Master Dōgen's Shōbōgenzō, and we're reading Sansuigyo, the Mountains and Water Sutra. I've just got to the end of paragraph 188. I'm just going to read this line again because it's so lovely. We should advance and retreat along the vigorous path on which the external world exhausts in practice the external world, and we should spring free. In general, ways of seeing mountains and water differ according to the type of being that sees them. There are beings which see what we call water as a string of pearls, but this does not mean that they see a string of pearls as water. They probably see as their water a form that we see as something else. We see their strings of pearls as water. There are beings which see water as wonderful flowers, but this does not mean that they use flowers as water. Demons see water as raging flames and see it as pus and blood. Dragons and fish see it as a palace and see it as a tower. Some see water as the seven treasures and the Mani gem. Some see it as trees and forests and fences and walls. Some see it as the pure and liberated Dharma nature. Some see it as the real human body, and some see it as the oneness of physical form and mental nature. Human beings see it as water, the causes and conditions of death and life. Thus, what is seen does indeed differ according to the kind of being that sees. Now let us be wary of this. Is it that there are various ways of seeing one object, or is it that we have mistakenly assumed the various images to be one object? At the crown of effort, we should make still further effort. If the above is so, then practice and experience and pursuit of the truth also may not be only of one kind or of two kinds, and the ultimate state also may be of thousands of kinds and myriad varieties. When we keep this point in mind, although there are many kinds of water, it seems that there is no original water and no water of many kinds. At the same time, the various waters which accord with the kinds of beings that see water do not depend on mind, do not depend on body, do not arise from karma, are not self-reliant, and are not reliant upon others. They have the liberated state of reliance on water itself. This being so, water is beyond earth, water, fire, wind, space, consciousness, and so on. Water is beyond blue, yellow, red, white, or black, and beyond sight, sounds, smells, tastes, sensations, or properties. At the same time, as earth, water, fire, wind, space, and so on, water is naturally realized. Because the nations and palaces of the present are like this, it may be difficult to state by what and into what they are created. It may be difficult to state by what and into what they are created. To assert that they hang on the circle of space and the circle of wind is not true to ourselves and not true to others. It is to speculate on the basis of the suppositions of the small view. People make this assertion because they think that without somewhere to hang, dharmas should not be able to abide. Excuse me. I can't seem to shake this cold. The Buddha says, all dharmas are ultimately liberated. They are without an abode. Remember, although they are in the state of liberation without any bonds, all dharmas are abiding in place. Even so, when human beings look at water, the only way we see it is as ceaselessly flowing. This flowing takes many forms, each of which is an example of the human view. Water flows over the earth, flows through the sky, flows upward and flows downward. It flows in a single winding brook, and it flows in the 9 great depths. It rises up to form clouds, and it comes down to form pools. Bunshi says, the way of water is to ascend to the sky, forming rain and dew, and to descend to the earth, forming rivers and streams. Now even the words of a secular person are like this. It would be most shameful for people who call themselves the descendants of the Buddhist patriarch to be more ignorant than secular people. We can say that the way of water is beyond the recognition of water, but water is able actually to flow. Water is also beyond non-recognition, but water is able actually to flow. It ascends to the sky and forms rain and dew. Remember, water rises up immeasurably high into the sky above to form rain and dew. Rain and dew are of various kinds corresponding to the various kinds of worlds. To say that there are places not reached by water is the teaching of Shravakas of the small vehicle, or the wrong teaching of non-Buddhists. Water reaches into flames, it reaches into the mind and its images, into wit and into discrimination, and it reaches into realization of the Buddha nature. It descends to the earth to form rivers and streams. Remember, when water descends to the earth, it forms rivers and streams. The vitality of rivers and streams can become sages. Common and stupid folk today assume that water is always in rivers, streams, and oceans, and so on. This is not so. Rivers and oceans are realized in water. Thus, water also exists in places which are not rivers and oceans. It is just that when water descends to the earth, it takes effect as rivers and oceans. Further, we must not understand that social worlds cannot exist, or that Buddha lands cannot exist at a place where water has formed rivers and oceans. Even inside a single drop, countless Buddha lands are realized. This does not mean that there is water within Buddha lands, and does not mean that there are Buddha lands inside water. The place where water exists is already beyond the three times, and beyond the world of Dharma. Even so, it is the universe in which water has been realized. Wherever Buddhist patriarchs go, water goes, and wherever water goes, Buddhist patriarchs are realized. This is why Buddhist patriarchs, without exception, when taking up water, have treated it as their body and mind, and have treated it as their thinking. I'll read that sentence again. This is why Buddhist patriarchs, without exception, when taking up water, have treated it as their body and mind, and have treated it as their thinking. This being so, that water rises up is not denied in any text, within Buddhism or without. The way of water pervades upward and downward, vertically and horizontally. At the same time, in the Buddhist sutras, fire and wind rise upward, earth and water settle downward. There is something to be learned in practice in this upward and downward. That is, we must learn in practice the Buddha's teaching of upward and downward as follows. The place where earth and water go, we think of as downward. We do not think of downward as a place where earth and water go. The place where fire and wind go is upward. The world of Dharma should not always be related to measurements upward, downward, and in the four diagonals. At the same time, the 4 elements, the 5 elements, the 6 elements, and so on, relying on the concrete place to which they go, just momentarily establish the 4-cornered Dharma world. It is not to be assumed that the heaven of thoughtlessness is above, and that Avicii hell is below. Avicii is the whole world of Dharma, and thoughtlessness is the whole world of Dharma. Still, when dragons and fish see water as a palace, they are probably like people looking at a palace, utterly unable to recognize that it is flowing away. If an onlooker were to explain to them, "Your palace is flowing water," the dragons and fish would likely be as startled as we are, as we were now to hear the assertion that mountains are flowing. Further, it may be possible to maintain and to rely upon the assertion that there is such preaching in every railing, stair, and outdoor pillar of a palace or a mansion. Quietly, we should have been considering this reasoning, and we should go on considering it. If we are not learning the state of liberation at the face of this place, we have not become free from the body and mind of the common man. We have not perfectly realized the land of Buddhist patriarchs, and we have not perfectly realized the palaces of the common man. Although human beings now are profoundly confident that the inner content of the seas and the inner content of the rivers is water, we still do not know what dragons, fish, and other beings view as water and use as water. When people today who are learning Buddhism want to learn about water, we should not stick blindly in only the human sphere. We should move forward and learn water in the Buddha's state of truth. We should learn in practice how we see the water that Buddhist patriarchs use. Further, we should learn in practice whether there is water or whether there is no water in the houses of Buddhist patriarchs. Mountains have been the dwelling places of great saints since the past and the present. Since beyond the past and the present, All the sages and all the saints have made the mountains into their inner sanctum and made the mountains into their body and mind. And by virtue of the sages and the saints, the mountains have been realized. We tend to suppose, with respect to mountains in general, that the countless great saints and great sages might be gathered there. But after we have entered the mountains, there is not a single person to meet. There is only the realization of the vigorous activity of mountains. Not even the traces of our having entered remain. When we are in the secular world gazing at the mountains, and when we are in the mountains meeting the mountains, their head and eyes are very different. Our notion that the mountains are not flowing, and our view that the mountains... it's confusing. Our notion that the mountains are not flowing, and our view that the mountains are not flowing, may be the same as the view of dragons and fish. While human beings and gods in our own world are in our element, other beings doubt this notion and view of ours, or they may not even doubt it. This being so, we should study the phrase mountains flow under Buddhist patriarchs. We should not leave it open to doubt. Acting once is just flowing. Acting once more is just not flowing. One time round is flowing. One time round is not flowing. Without this investigation and practice, it is not the right Dharma wheel of the Tathagata. An eternal Buddha says, if you want to be able not to invite the karma of incessant hell, do not insult the right Dharma wheel of the Tathagata. We should engrave these words on skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. We should engrave them on body and mind, on object and subject. We should engrave them on the immaterial, and we should engrave them on the matter. They are already engraved on trees and rocks, and they are already engraved in fields and in villages. We generally say that mountains belong to a country, but mountains belong to people who love mountains. Mountains always love their occupiers, whereupon saints and sages, people of high virtue, enter the mountains. When saints and sages live in the mountains, because the mountains belong to these sages and saints, trees and rocks abound and flourish, and birds and animals are mysteriously excellent. This is because the sages and saints have covered them with virtue. We should remember the fact that mountains like sages and the fact that mountains like saints. That many emperors have gone to the mountains to bow before sages and to question great saints is an excellent example in the past and the present. At such times, the emperors honour the sages and saints with the formalities due to a teacher, never conforming to the secular norms. Imperial authority exerts no control whatever over the mountain sages. Clearly, the mountains are beyond the human world. On Kodo Mountain, in the bygone days of Kaho, the Yellow Emperor visited Kosai, crawling on his knees and kowtowing to beg instruction. Shakyamuni Buddha left the palace of his father, the king, to enter the mountains. But his father, the king, did not resent the mountains. The royal father did not distrust those in the mountains who would teach the prince, whose 12 years of training in the truth were mostly spent in the mountains. The revelation of the prince's destiny as the king of Dharma also took place in the mountains. Truly, not even the wheel-rolling kings hold sway over the mountains. Remember, the mountains are beyond the boundaries of the human world and beyond the boundaries of the heavens above. We can never know the mountains with the human intellect. If their flowing is not to be compared with flowing in the human world, who can doubt the flowing, the non-flowing, and the other activities of the mountains? Again, since the ancient past, there have been from time to time sages and saints who live by the water. When they live by the water, there are those who fish fishes, those who fish human beings, and those who fish for the state of truth. Each of these is in the traditional stream of those who are in the water. Going further, there may be those who fish themselves, those who fish fishing, those who are fished by fishing, and those who are fished by the state of truth. In days of old, when Master Tokujō suddenly left Yakuzan Mountain to live amidst the river's mind, he got the sage of the Katai River. Was this not fishing fishes? Was it not fishing human beings? Was it not fishing water? Was it not fishing himself? A person who is able to meet Tokujō is Tokujō, and Tokujō's teaching people is a human being meeting a human being. It is not only that there is water in the world, there are worlds in the world of water. And it is not only in water that such worlds exist. There are worlds of sentient beings in clouds. There are worlds of sentient beings in wind. There are worlds of sentient beings in fire. There are worlds of sentient beings in earth. There are worlds of sentient beings in the world of Dharma. There are worlds of sentient beings in a stalk of grass. And there are worlds of sentient beings in a staff. Wherever there are worlds of sentient beings, the world of Buddhist patriarchs inevitably exists at that place. We should carefully learn in practice the truth which is like this. In conclusion then, water is the palace of real dragons. It is beyond flowing and falling. If we recognize it is only flowing, the word flowing insults water because, for example, the word forces water to be what is other than flowing itself. Water is nothing but water's real form as it is. Water is just the virtues of water itself. It is beyond flowing. When we master the flow and master the non-flow of a single body of water, the perfect realization of the myriad dharmas is realized at once. With mountains too. There are mountains contained in treasure. There are mountains contained in marshes. There are mountains contained in space. There are mountains contained in mountains. And there is learning in practice in which mountains are contained in containment. An eternal Buddha says, mountains are mountains, water is water. These words do not say that mountains are mountains. They say that mountains are mountains. This being so, we should master the mountains in practice. When we are mastering the mountains in practice, that is effort in the mountains. Mountains and water, like this, naturally produce sages and produce saints. Shōbōgenzō Sansuigyo, preached to the assembly at Kanandori Koshi Horinji Temple on the 18th day of the 10th lunar month in the first year of Niji. Thanks for listening.